My best friend was an immigrant from, he was a refugee from Ukraine. She came to the United States not because she really wanted to. Well, we all grateful to be here. I love this country. We all do appreciate everything that people do for Ukraine. But she came here because of the war, to hide from death, from the danger. She came here with her family. And this is not normal.
Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2026. While couples across America were waking up to breakfast in bed, last-minute flower orders, and texts that said thinking of you, a 25-year-old man named Caleb Fosnaugh was already behind the wheel of his white 2018 Ford Mustang. It was early. The highway was quiet, and he had been driving for hours. He wasn't heading to a restaurant. He wasn't surprising anyone with chocolates. He was driving from Koshocton County, Ohio, straight to Vass, North Carolina, 9 hours. Across state lines, on Valentine's Day. At 7:45 that morning, Moore County Sheriff's deputies responded to a shooting at a home in Vass. When they walked through that door, they found 2 people dead. Kateryna Tovmash, 21 years old, a Ukrainian refugee who had already survived a war to be standing on American soil. Matthew Wade, 28 years old, a United States Army soldier stationed at Fort Bragg, a man who had dedicated his life to protecting others. Both of them were gone. And the man deputies believed had pulled that trigger, Caleb Fosnaugh, was already back on that highway, heading home. Like February 14th was just another day. Welcome to True Crime Unveiled 247, where silence is broken and hidden truths are exposed. To our returning subscribers, thank you for standing with us. May you and your loved ones always remain safe. If you are new here, take a second right now and subscribe. Not just for this channel, but to be part of a community that believes every single victim deserves their full story told. Your support makes that possible. Now let's uncover the truth together. Today's case, Valentine's Day, 2026. A quiet neighborhood in Vass, North Carolina. A Ukrainian refugee named Kateryna Tovmash, an American soldier named Matthew Wade, and a 25-year-old ex-boyfriend from Ohio named Caleb Fosnaugh, who made a choice that morning that 2 families will carry for the rest of their lives. Before we go any further, here is what you need to know going into this story. Caleb Fosnaugh had no violent criminal history on record. None. His prior offenses were traffic violations. That was it. He drove 9 hours across state lines on Valentine's Day to reach a woman who had already left him. He did not knock on the front door. He broke in. By the time Kateryna Tovmash and Matthew Wade were found that morning, Caleb was already hours away, driving back to Ohio, retracing the same route he had taken to get there. And one more detail, one that makes everything about this case even harder to sit with. Her younger siblings were inside that home that morning, including her 6-year-old brother. Drop a candle in the comments right now for Kateryna and Matthew, 2 people who deserved every single day they didn't get. This is their story. Her name was Kateryna Tovmash, but if you knew her, really knew her, you called her Katya. She was 21 years old, the oldest of 6 children, born and raised in Ukraine as a devout member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a faith that shaped not just how she worshiped, but how she moved through the world, with a quiet, unshakable belief that showing up for people was never optional. She had a childhood best friend named Carol. Same school, same church, same streets. The kind of friendship built so early and so deep that words become almost unnecessary. The other person just already knows. Carol described Katya simply.
I lost my best friend that I was with my whole life.
Kirill Prishepshuk and Katya Tovmash grew up in the same city in Ukraine, went to the same school, the same LDS church, and later both fled the war after Russia invaded.
You just know if you're going to go back to your country, you might die. So you don't have option. So that's very hard.
Kirill ended up in Utah, Katya in North Carolina, shocked getting the call from her brother that Katya had been murdered.
This is not something that should happen in the world, where just a girl is looking for protection and then she's getting murdered.
Just 21 years old, Katya was shot and killed alongside her boyfriend, Fort Bragg soldier Matthew Wade.
Amazing. She was best friends with all of her siblings, especially her sisters. And I love that so much because that love towards her siblings, that help that she gave them,
That's kind of how it was with everybody else.
He still can't wrap his mind around why this happened.
It doesn't matter if they broke up or doesn't matter what happened between both of them. This is not normal.
It's also rattled the Ukrainian refugee community, who are still shaken up by the murder of Irina Zarutska, another Ukrainian refugee who was stabbed to death on a light rail train in Charlotte. For Kirill, it's bittersweet as he prepares to return to Ukraine.
It's not the reason why I'm leaving the United States, but I am worried. It's a second woman that was murdered in North Carolina for the past 7 months. I don't feel good about that.
And while he still dreams of an end to the war, home will never be the same without Katya.
I'll just probably say that I love her. I think there's just something we always should say to people that we love, to people that are close. And sometimes we don't say that enough.
The family made their way to the United States. They settled first in Ohio, a new country, a new language, a new everything. And Katya, true to who she had always been, did not fall apart. She adjusted. She helped her family adjust. She held it together the way she always had, because that is what the oldest of 6 does when there is no other option. She was 21 years old, and she had already lived through more displacement, more grief, and more loss than most people will face in a lifetime. And still, she chose to build. That tells you something about a person. Think about that for a moment, and leave your answer in the comments. What does it say about someone who survives a war and still decides to start again? It was in Ohio that Katya met Caleb Fosnaugh. We will get back to him. But first, there is someone else you need to know. Because by the time Valentine's Day 2026 arrived, Katya had moved on. She had relocated from Ohio to Vass, North Carolina. She had found stability. She had found someone. His name was Matthew Wade. 28 years old, a United States Army soldier stationed at Fort Bragg, the installation since renamed Fort Liberty, one of the largest military bases in the world, sitting just outside of Fayetteville, North Carolina. Matthew had dedicated years of his life to that uniform, to that oath, to the idea that service means something. His sister Megan described him as a man who loved deeply. She said what happened to him was driven by something as small as jealousy. And the weight of that word, small, is not lost on anyone paying attention. He had plans. He was going to travel to Italy later that year. He was the kind of man people gravitated toward, the funniest person in a room full of people, the one who made everyone feel like they mattered just by being present. Matthew Wade and Kateryna Tovmash were sharing a home in Vass, a soldier and a refugee, a man built to protect and a woman who had already proven she could survive. 2 people who had found each other on the other side of hard things, building something real and quiet in theirs. That was their life. On the morning of February 14th, 2026, that was what existed inside that home in Vass, North Carolina. Now, Caleb Fosnaugh, 25 years old, Koshocton County, Ohio, a rural county in east-central Ohio, about an hour south of Canton, the kind of place where everyone knows their neighbors and strangers are noticed. He had lived there for the better part of a decade. He and Katya had dated during the period she lived in Ohio, after her family first arrived in the United States. The Moore County Sheriff's Office confirmed the relationship. They were an ex-couple. That part is not disputed. What is not in the public record is how it ended. There is no documented restraining order. No police report tied to their relationship, no court filing that suggests Katya ever formally reported feeling threatened by him. On paper, Caleb Fosnaugh was clean. His only prior offenses were traffic violations. But here is the thing about what paper can and cannot hold. Paper captures what has already broken through the surface. It does not capture what is building underneath. It does not record the texts that go unanswered. It does not document the moment someone decides that a breakup is not final, that the other person leaving is a problem to be solved rather than a reality to be accepted. Katya moved to North Carolina. She met Matthew Wade. She built a new chapter, in a new state, with a new person, far from Ohio and far from Caleb Fosnaugh. She moved forward, and somewhere inside Caleb, that was the part he could not accept. We do not know what he told himself during those months. We do not know what he believed about what Katya owed him, or whether he had reached out and been ignored, or whether the silence itself was what eventually broke something in him. The public record does not give us that. What the record gives us is a date. February 14th, 2026, a white 2018 Ford Mustang, and a man who had made up his mind. 9 hours is a long drive, long enough to turn around 100 times, long enough to reconsider, long enough to choose differently. He did not choose differently. We do not know exactly what time he left Koshocton County. We do not know whether he drove through the night or left in the early hours before dawn. What we know is that by the time Moore County Sheriff's deputies received a call about a shooting at a residence in Vass at approximately 7:45 in the morning, Caleb Fosnaugh had already been and gone, which means he arrived at that home early, before the morning had fully started, before most of Vass, North Carolina had any reason to be awake. And inside that home, Valentine's Day had begun the way it was supposed to. Kateryna Tovmash was there. Matthew Wade was there. And Katya's younger siblings were there too. She was watching them that morning, the way she had always watched over the people she loved. Her 6-year-old brother was in that house. A child. On a Saturday morning in February, in a home that was supposed to be the safest place any of them had ever known. These were ordinary minutes. The kind that do not announce themselves as significant. The kind that only become the last normal moments in hindsight, after everything that follows has already happened. Nobody inside that home in Vass knew that a white Ford Mustang had spent the better part of a night crossing state lines toward them. Nobody knew that Caleb Fosnaugh was already there. Here is the detail that matters, and it matters more than almost anything else in this case. When Caleb Fosnaugh arrived at that home on Valentine's Day morning, he did not knock on the front door. He did not call ahead. He did not stand on the porch and wait. He did not arrive the way anyone arrives at a home they have any right to enter. He broke in. The charge of breaking and entering filed against Caleb Fosnaugh is not a procedural footnote buried somewhere in the court documents. It is the detail that makes the nature of that visit impossible to misread. You do not travel 9 hours across state lines and force your way through a door because you want a conversation. You do not break into the home of a woman who has already moved on, who is already with someone else, who has already built an entire life without you, because you are looking for closure. That entrance, that forced, deliberate entrance, tells you exactly what Caleb Fosnaugh came there to do. There was no version of that morning where this ended well. Not after a 9-hour drive, not after a broken door, not with a 6-year-old child somewhere inside that house and 2 people who had absolutely no reason to expect any of what was about to happen. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something. 9 hours behind a wheel, crossing 2 states on Valentine's Day, heading towards someone who had already left you behind. What do you think goes through a person's mind during a drive like that? Is it rage? Is it grief? Is it something that started quiet and grew louder with every mile? Leave your answer in the comments, because understanding that question, really sitting with it, is the only way to make sense of what happened next. At approximately 7:45 that Saturday morning, the Moore County Sheriff's Office received a call reporting a shooting at a residence in Vass. Deputies responded and arrived to find Kateryna Tovmash and Matthew Wade inside the home. Both deceased. The scene was already cold. No suspect on the premises. No vehicle matching Caleb Fosnaugh's white Mustang anywhere nearby. He was already gone. Already north. Already somewhere on a highway between North Carolina and Ohio, retracing the exact route he had driven to get there. The same exits, the same mile markers, the same roads that had carried him toward 2 people who never saw him coming. The Moore County Sheriff's Office now had a crime scene, 2 victims, a suspect they could identify, and a shrinking window to catch him before he crossed back into Ohio and walked through his own front door. The clock had started, and every minute that passed was another mile he put between himself and what he had left behind in Vass. The Moore County Sheriff's Office did not have the luxury of time. They had a crime scene in Vass, North Carolina, 2 victims, a suspect already identified, Caleb Fosnaugh, 25 years old, Koshocton County, Ohio, the ex-boyfriend. They had a vehicle, a white 2018 Ford Mustang, and they had a direction. What they did not have was him. Investigators did not wait. They did not convene lengthy meetings or spend hours building a case before making a move. They picked up the phone and called Ohio. The Koshocton County Sheriff's Office received that call from North Carolina and moved immediately. What followed was not the kind of detective work that gets dramatized on television. There were no dramatic breakthroughs, no single piece of evidence that cracked everything open. What there was math. Cold, focused, urgent math. Time of crime. Estimated time of departure from Vass. Average drive time from North Carolina to Koshocton County, Ohio. Likely route. Likely speed. If Caleb Fosnaugh left that home in Vass sometime in the early morning hours of February 14th, and if he was driving north on a route that would bring him back into Koshocton County, then by early afternoon he would be close. Very close. The Koshocton County Sheriff's Office coordinated with the Ohio State Highway Patrol, troopers on the ground, resources in the air. They identified the most probable route back into the county, State Route 541, and they positioned themselves along it. And then they waited. At 2:18 in the afternoon on February 14, 2026, roughly 6 hours after Moore County deputies had found Kateryna Tovmash and Matthew Wade dead inside that home in Vass, a white 2018 Ford Mustang appeared on State Route 541 in Linton Township, Koshocton County, Ohio. Deputies and troopers moved in. They surrounded the vehicle. They gave commands. Caleb Fosnaugh was taken into custody without incident.
Tonight, new video obtained by 10 TV shows the arrest of an Ohio man accused of killing his ex-girlfriend and a U.S. soldier. Kateryna Tovmash and Matthew Wade were found shot to death in a North Carolina home on Valentine's Day morning. Right now, Caleb Fosnaugh is in a jail in Koshocton County, charged with 2 counts of murder and breaking and entering. I want to thank you for being with us, both on 10 TV and streaming on 10 TV Plus. I'm Jeff Hogan.
And I'm Stacia Nucken. Tonight, we're hearing from the Koshocton County Sheriff's Office about how they tracked Fosnaugh down in Ohio. 10 TV's Carla Rogner live for us tonight in Koshocton County with details. Carla, what do we know?
Yeah, well, the suspect is being held in this jail behind me here in Koshocton County without bond right now. I talked to a lieutenant today who says that the suspect has lived in the county for about a decade, but his only criminal history includes traffic issues. The sheriff's office shared new video of his arrest today. Take a look. After authorities in North Carolina learned the suspect, 25-year-old Caleb Fosnaugh, may be headed back to Ohio, they contacted Koshocton County for help.
Walking. Yeah.
The sheriff's office working with Ohio State troopers from the road and the sky to track the suspect down on State Route 541.
A lieutenant from the Koshocton County Sheriff's Office described the operation as seamless. Every agency communicating, every piece of the coordination working exactly as it was supposed to. No standoff, no pursuit, no chaos. Just law enforcement closing in from multiple directions on a country road in rural Ohio. Calm, methodical, and precise. The arrest footage was shared publicly.
Well, basically, we had to try to figure out the time of the crime, when he possibly left, and kind of time it out of how many hours it would take to get back from North Carolina back to his residence here.
Lieutenant Andrews says he's thankful officers and troopers completed the arrest safely.
1631-1 in custody. Good job.
It was seamless, very seamless on the apprehension. All agencies cooperated extremely well to one another.
Deputies also sharing the video of Caleb Fosnaugh as he's booked into the jail. He's now charged in North Carolina with breaking and entering and 2 counts of murder for the shooting deaths of U.S. soldier Matthew Wade, who was stationed at Fort Bragg, and Kateryna Tovmash. Authorities say Tovmash and Fosnaugh had dated in Ohio. Her friends tell us Tovmash came to the United States from Ukraine to seek safety from war. Her connection to Ohio is unclear. Tovmash was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Her family now raising money to bring her body to Utah for burial. This morning, a Koshocton County judge signed an extradition order approving him to be brought back to North Carolina. Now deputies there have 30 days to pick him up here. Reporting live in Koshocton County, Carla Rogner, 10 TV News.
Deputies surrounding that white Mustang on the side of the road, the exchange of commands, Caleb Fosnaugh stepping out, routine in its appearance, staggering in its context. He was 6 miles from home. 6 miles. After a 9-hour drive south and 9 hours back north, after everything that happened inside that house in Vass, after crossing 2 state lines in a single day, he was 6 miles from his front door when they stopped him. He almost made it. He was transported to the Koshocton County Justice Center and booked. The booking footage was also made public. You can watch him walk through those doors. The processing, the paperwork, the fluorescent lights of a county jail intake, all of it unfolding with the same flat routine of any other arrest on any other day. Except it was not any other day. While Caleb Fosnaugh was being fingerprinted in Koshocton County, Ohio, plus about a person. In the days after February 14th, Kateryna's family did what families in impossible situations have always done. They found a way to keep moving, even when moving felt like the hardest thing in the world. They started a GoFundMe, not for themselves but to bring Katya home, to bring her body to Utah, where part of her family had settled after first arriving in the United States, so she could be buried among people who loved her. Strangers donated. People in Ukraine donated. People across America who had never met Kateryna Tovmash, who only knew her name from a news headline on a Saturday morning, gave money because her story reached them somewhere real. Over $20,000 was raised. Think about what that means. A 21-year-old Ukrainian refugee killed in a small town in North Carolina, and the response from the public was immediate, and it was generous, and it came from 2 continents. Because people understood, without needing it explained, what her story meant, what it cost, what it represented. Her 5 younger siblings had already lost their homeland. They had already watched their family pack whatever could be carried and leave Ukraine behind under the shadow of war. They had already rebuilt once, learned a new language, adjusted to a new country, found a new normal in a place that was not the place they came from. And now they had to figure out how to exist without the person who had held all of that together. The oldest, the one who always showed up, the one their mother could rely on, gone. And then Kateryna's family said something publicly that made people stop. They asked the world not to direct hate toward Caleb Fosnaugh. They said they were people of Christian faith. They said they believed in forgiveness, not as an excuse, not as an erasure of what he did, but as the only path they knew toward peace. They said it while they were still in the earliest, most raw hours of grief, while arrangements were still being made, while their daughter had not yet been buried. There is one more thing that has to be said before this story ends, because it would be wrong to close without saying it. 7 months before Kateryna Tovmash was killed in Vass, North Carolina, another Ukrainian refugee woman was murdered in the same state. Her name was Kateryna Tovmash. In August 2025, she was stabbed to death on a light rail train in Charlotte, North Carolina. She was also a refugee. She had also fled Ukraine. She had also arrived in America carrying the hope that here at least the violence would stop. 2 women, both Ukrainian, both refugees, both murdered in North Carolina within 7 months of each other. Carol, who was preparing to return to Ukraine when Kateryna was killed, said he did not feel good about that pattern. That it was the second Ukrainian woman murdered in North Carolina in 7 months, and that it sat with him in a way he could not shake. It should sit with all of us. These were not women who were careless with their safety. These were not women who had any reason to believe their lives were at risk on an ordinary day in an American city or an American suburb. These were women who had already run from the worst thing imaginable, who had already made the calculation that leaving was the only way to survive, who had already paid an enormous price just to be standing on this soil. Kateryna Tovmash was on a train, Kateryna Tovmash was in her home. Both of them believed they had made it to safety. The promise that survived means protected. That promise failed them both. Not because America is without worth, but because that promise has to mean something beyond a border crossing. It has to extend into the ordinary Tuesday, the Saturday morning, the Valentine's Day, that is supposed to be about flowers and not about funerals. They deserved that. Both of them deserved that. Kateryna Tovmash was 21 years old. Matthew Wade was 28. What does justice look like for Kateryna and Matthew? That is the question I am leaving with you. Drop your answer in the comments. And while you are there, Tell me whether you believe the system, as it exists right now, has the tools to stop something like this before it reaches a front door in Vass, North Carolina. I want your honest answer. If this case reached you, share it. Every comment, every share, every view is a way of telling Kateryna's family that the world has not moved on, that her name is still being spoken, that she is not forgotten. Subscribe to True Crime Unveiled 247. We will see you in the next case. Stay safe, always.